What's up guys, Jesse here, and this is the iPhone 12 Pro, and this is the iPhone 12. Now I've already done a full review of the iPhone 12 Pro, and my original plan was to also do a full review of the iPhone 12. But the more I use both of these phones, the more I'm realizing that they're very similar phones. So I thought it'd be more productive just to do a comparison of the two. So if you haven't already watched my review of the Pro, then you should go check that out. But today we're going to try to answer the question, should you spend the extra money on the Pro, or are you going to be fine with the 12? So like I said a second ago, these phones are very similar. They have the exact same screen, the exact same battery size, and even the same processor. But we're here to talk about differences, so let's start off with the design. And even here we can see that these two phones are very similar. They basically have the same design, but with the material choices reversed. So on the base 12, you've got a glossy glass back with matte aluminum side rails, while on the Pro, you've got a matte glass back with glossy stainless steel side rails. And I gotta say, I definitely prefer the design of the Pro over the regular 12. I just think it looks more premium, and I especially like the matte glass because it totally rejects fingerprints while the 12 shows them pretty easily. I also just really don't like the design of the regular 12's camera bump. It's slightly smaller than the one on the Pro, but to me it just looks like something's kind of missing from it, and it almost feels like lazy design to me. Almost as if in the design room they just said, how do we make it look like the Pro but just not as nice, and then they just came up with that. The base 12 does have its perks though. Because they used aluminum instead of stainless steel, the phone is actually considerably lighter. I don't really know what it is on paper, but in person it definitely makes a significant difference. Now I personally don't really mind the extra weight of the Pro because I think it just makes it feel a little bit more substantial, and I kind of like my phones to have a little bit of heft to them. But if weight is something that's important to you, that might be something to consider. Now moving on to the screens, they're the exact same panel. They're both OLED, same resolution, same size, same bezels, same notch. But Apple has artificially lowered the max brightness on the base 12. I found that they both got bright enough for use outdoors, and I never really found myself wanting for more brightness while I was using the 12. I think it'll only really make a difference if you spend a lot of time outside in direct sunlight, but I think for most people it's not really going to be a deciding factor. Performance is also almost identical on these two phones. They're both running iOS 14 and have the exact same A14 Bionic chip. The only difference is that the 12 only has 4GB of RAM while the Pro has 6. And I found that in real world usage, the difference was pretty minimal as well. Basically on the Pro, you can have a couple more apps open at the same time without having to restart them when you switch between. And if that's something you do pretty often, that might be a reason to go for the Pro over the regular 12. But for me, the difference, like I said, was pretty minimal, and it wouldn't really be a deciding factor for me. Battery life though is a little bit better on the 12 than the 12 Pro. They both have the same 2800 mAh battery, but because the 12 has a little bit less RAM, a lower brightness screen, it just uses a little bit less power than the Pro does. The difference comes out to be pretty small, but if you really value battery life, then the Pro is going to be a little bit worse than the regular 12. So you're probably thinking at this point, these phones are very similar. And yeah, they are. But I think the biggest and maybe most important difference between these two phones are the cameras. So the base 12 has two 12 megapixel cameras, a wide and an ultra wide, which I think is pretty smart. I think if you're only going to put two lenses on a phone, it should be those two. While on the Pros, you get those same two cameras, but also add on a telephoto camera and a LiDAR sensor. So photos with the ultra wide and wide cameras on these two phones look exactly the same, so I'm not really going to talk about them. But with the Pro, you get the advantage of having that telephoto lens. And it comes in really handy if you take a lot of zoomed in photos, because you get the optical zoom rather than the digital zoom where it just crops in on the sensor and you end up losing a lot of resolution. And I think you can especially tell the difference when you go past 2x zoom, because on the regular 12, even though it doesn't have that 2x telephoto lens, you can digitally zoom 2x and it'll look okay. Like there will be a little bit of softness and it doesn't look amazing, but I think it's still passable. Once you go past that though, the image starts to fall apart pretty quickly. While on the Pro, you can zoom in a lot farther before the image starts to fall apart. And all of that applies to video as well. Like if you want to take a zoomed in photo on the Pro, you can still maintain a 4K resolution. But on the regular 12, if you zoom in, you're going to have to lower that resolution and you're not going to get as sharp of an image. Also with the Pro, you get the LiDAR sensor, which helps with autofocus as well as AR functions like the Measure app or staging a room. As far as autofocus goes, the 12 is faster and more accurate than the 12 is. And the difference is noticeable, but it's not huge. And I also wouldn't say that the autofocus on the regular 12 is bad. One thing to note though is that if you like to use portrait mode a lot, the LiDAR sensor on the Pro will allow you to take portrait shots in much lower light than the regular 12. Also, since the Pro does have that telephoto lens, you can take portrait shots with the telephoto as well as the wide, while on the 12 you only get the wide. So bottom line is, if you care about camera quality, then the Pro is definitely going to be better. But I think the real question is the Pro worth the extra money? Especially since these two phones are so similar. They have the exact same screen, same processor, same battery, same ultra wide and wide cameras, and they even share a lot of the same design. So the 12 Pro is priced at $1,000 for the 128GB base variant, while the 12 is priced at $830 for the 64GB base variant, which is a difference of almost $200, which is pretty significant. But hold on, the base model of the Pro is 128GB. While the base model on the regular 12 is 64GB. If you want to upgrade the 12 to 128GB, which I feel like is probably the best option for most people, then you're sitting at $880, which is only a $120 difference from the Pro version. And even though these phones are very similar, I feel like the Pro does beat out the 12 in a lot of little areas. And if you're planning on keeping these phones for a long time, I feel like a lot of those little wins are going to start adding up over the years and turn into big wins. So if I had to choose between these two phones, I would probably just pay the extra money and then go for the Pro. I think the upgrades that it brings to the table are worth its extra price. But the 12 is still a very good phone, and you get largely the same experience at a slightly lower price point. Anyways, that's all for this video. If you still have any questions about either of these phones, then just leave it in the comment section down below and I'd be happy to answer them. Remember to smash that like button, and if you enjoy content like this, think about subscribing and hitting the bell so you don't miss anything. As always, thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace!